Blog Talk Radio.
Outbreak for you right now. Doctors say all the stress about possibly getting it could affect your mental health too. News Channel 5's Mo Hyder live at the state's health department for us in downtown Nashville this morning. And Mo, we understand the worry about the coronavirus now has its own name.
Yeah, this certainly is real, Amy. You could have coronavirus stress syndrome, but doctors say don't worry too much because there are ways to avoid it. They do recommend, for starters, using some stress relievers, like avoiding people who are paranoid about the virus. Also, spend time with just your family and friends. A negative side effect of all the stress is it can weaken your immune system, putting you at risk of getting sick.
It is getting to very dangerous proportions, a lot more dangerous in regard to stress, the psychological aspect of it, and people doing things in a panic, mass hysteria, and doing things that are more dangerous than the actual coronavirus.
And most importantly, health experts do say just relax, wash your hands with soap periodically, and of course avoid touching your face as much as you can. Live in downtown Nashville, Mo Hyder, News Channel 5.
And good evening, and welcome to another edition of the Batchelor News Radio Show. Hope you're having a good day wherever you are listening. We appreciate you checking in here on the show. 646-929-0130, the number to get in touch with us if you have a question. Hit us up there. You can also hit us up on Facebook at Pat Nation, Pat Nation 2 at Twitter, and of course we are live on Facebook Live too. Want to go to my first guest. She is a clinical psychologist, best-selling author, and Dream Catalyst. She is Dr. Barbara Lavi, and Dr. Barb, always good to have you on. I appreciate you coming on. And I played that excerpt, and I have another one to play a little bit later. But it talks about they talk about some things to do in the midst of all of this, these changing things, these changing updates, the news when it comes to this coronavirus. And my first two questions to you are more of a professional around when it comes to dealing with this. And the first question is, a person like myself in the media, I have to watch this stuff because we have to report it. So I'm constantly watching this in the midst of trying to have my own personal downtime with children and everything else. How does one like myself in the media, who has to follow what's going on so we can report this stuff factually and honestly to people, how do we, what are the things we need to do if we have to constantly watch this and report on it? And how do we get some peace and relief from that?
Well, that's a very good question, and it's not the easiest thing to answer either. There's a highfalutin psychological term called compartmentalization, which means sort of putting things into blocks in your mind and setting them aside. And I think sort of the best way of describing it is that you have to be able to turn it off a bit when you're with your family, when you're with your friends, to do things that are enjoyable, pleasant, will stimulate your brain in other ways and get your mind off of it. Exercise helps, laughter, really saying, you know what, I'm doing what I can for the public through my radio show, or certainly therapists have to do the same kind of thing, to turn it off when they get home as much as possible. Now, it's easier said than done because everyone is in the same storm. We're all dealing with the same, anxiety and fears and trying to lead as normal a life in a surreal world as we can. And so finding ways to sort of turn it off, whatever helps you to at least set it aside and put it into a box and say, I will open that box again when I need to prepare for the show, or, listen from a therapist perspective, listen to the clients and try to be there for them, but not carry it around with you 24/7. So if when I'm free, I do Zumba, and that clears my head. And that's one of the ways that I can keep going. And in many ways, in the same way that you need to be aware, I need to be aware, because I'm an educational resource for all of my clients.
Well, you just kind of went to my second question, which is, what do therapists do in the midst? If you see, I see on TV when some of the dramatizations of some of the shows, and there's a therapist involved, psychologist, and they go through maybe something traumatic. I mean, even in these shows, Law and Order, a therapist was raped. So how do therapists have to have a therapist in the times like this? Do you need to speak to someone professionally yourself?
Well, I'll tell you the kinds of things that I've done over the course of my career and that I'm doing now as well. And that's, I organized a support group for therapists where they can talk about how it's feeling and what's happening for them. So therapists are human beings too. And at times they need therapy, and there may be times, that people do go into therapy. They're not necessarily in therapy all the time, but they're aware enough of their own needs that if you need to be talking with someone about what's going on, you do it. And so in the same way that the general public needs help, therapists do as well, especially with something as extreme as what we're going through. And so, that's a healthy thing to recognize that it'll help to talk to someone. I've been encouraging people that are managers and that I work with as clients, that they encourage their staff to talk about how they're feeling about what's going on, and encourage them to use online therapy. Many insurance companies are allowing people to use online therapy now and phone therapy, and even not having to pay their own copay, so that it's because we know that it helps. Whenever someone's going through a traumatic event, the sooner that they get help and they talk about it and can process it, the less likely it is to have long-term negative impact. So everyone should be using, with the limited time that we all have, making space and time to talk about how it feels, to get tips from therapists, to join support groups among other people. There's parenting groups to talk about what it's like, and together you can come up with some ideas and creative ways to help get through this. And that's my suggestion to people. The more we talk, the more we do better. And all of my experience through the years, from when I was a therapist working on my master's thesis in Israel to help people deal with war and father absence and death of a parent, since then I've been helping people find ways to cope and to be resilient. And that's, I often say that I was a positive psychologist before they even had the name for it, because that's what I did my first research on, was to try to find what helps people through crises like these. So I jump into action and do things to help people. And I know the more that we can talk to one another, the more that we get resources out there, the better people will cope with this disaster. And it is a disaster.
We're talking with Dr. Barbara Lavi here on the Batchelor News Radio Show. Dr. Barb, I had a conversation with a cousin of mine, and we were discussing the fact that you can always look at the statistics, and I believe, and I know a lot of people believe it's factual, that African Americans tend to be very, I don't know if the word stubborn, in terms of not just physical health, but certainly mental health. It's very taboo. Just get over it. Just stop smoking. Just stop drinking. Just stop whatever. What do you say to those people who feel like they can, take it within and take it within themselves and say, I can get through this. This is not a big deal. I'm going to get over this. But deep down inside, they may be going through depression, not just on regular basis, but just specifically with something like this, whereas there's a lot of uncertainty. You have children, you have family members that have pre-existing conditions. What do you say to those people who say, like, okay, this is not, I can handle this myself. I don't need to talk to anybody. I don't need to talk to anybody professionally.
Well, that's a problem that many cultures have, not just the Black culture, unfortunately. And part of what I say is that there are a couple of things. One is that having another person listen to you and help you through a tough time is simply an asset. Two heads are better than one. And so you don't have to be going through horrendous problems in order to benefit from talking to someone. In the past, in the olden times, we lived close to our parents, we lived close to our aunts and uncles, and we're close to religious leaders, and we used them as our resources. They were sort of our therapists in many ways. And now, as people have spread out to different, states and countries, and right now we're separated in our houses, we still can utilize family as resources, but as things become more complex, talking to someone who's not in your family is one way to get a more objective view, and someone who's studied how to deal with crises and trauma is simply, it's just a resource. It's an added resource. And so, the other thing that someone once said is that you don't have to wait until you're, crawling on all fours to get help. And if you start when you begin to feel overwhelmed or overly stressed, you're going to be helped faster and not need as much help. And the work in reality in therapy isn't done just in the hour. It's the time in between when whatever you've talked about with the therapist, you can actually apply or try to figure out or see if it helps or it doesn't. The work happens outside of the therapy room. The therapy room sometimes enlightens you and opens your mind to ideas, but it's afterwards that you apply them, and then you come back and say, this worked, but this one didn't. You know what happened? This is how it worked. Or I don't think I quite understood you, or I tried talking to someone and it didn't work. So then you put your heads together again. It's not a magic pill that the therapist magically cures the person. It's a collaboration. It's a process that two people work on together.
If
so
you're talking about,
no,
it makes sense. But if that person's very angry, how do you dissect that? Especially if it's a person that's pointing fingers. We have that now. This country was divided even before the virus. So some people, you and I've had conversations. Some people will put the blame solely on the administration or solely on whatever. And if the Republicans were in office, this wouldn't have happened, or the Democrats were, if they weren't focused on impeaching the president, we would have caught they politicized the whole thing, and it breeds a sense of anger and everything else. How do you deal with folks like that?
Well, again, you're asking really good questions. When people are angry, if someone is very angry and I'm worried about them, then I try to help them say, it feels like you're awfully angry. You're justified to feel that way, and maybe it would help to talk to someone about how you're angry and see what you can do about your anger, how you can sort through it, because people who are carrying around anger are also stressing themselves to the limit. And the more you stress the person, if there's no way for the anger to come out or to be discussed or to be resolved, it goes internally. It leads to headaches, backaches, heart attacks. I mean, it's not a healthy thing to be carrying around anger or sorrow and not be able to just express it and talk to someone about it. And when you get it out, it's, if you think of a pressure cooker and if it doesn't have the safety valve, what will happen? It'll blow up. Or, and then people act out if they don't have the emotions or a way to express their emotions, or it causes internal damage and headaches and backaches and exhaustion and depression. And so talking to someone can help you get it out and figure out what you can do about your feelings. And whether it's to take action to do something, if you're unhappy with the administration, to do something about it, to get involved with political action. But it's not a matter of politics that in order to deal with your feelings, because both sides have anger, but they need help in expressing it in ways that are acceptable and that are productive. Anger in itself isn't bad. It's acting out that's bad. If I'm angry, I'm not hurting anyone by being angry except myself. And so if you can get it out and do something about it, you're not going to be as angry.
That's a great point. Talking with Dr. Barbara Lavi, clinical psychologist, best-selling author, and a dream catalyst here on the Batchelor News Radio show. Doc, one of the things I've done, and I know you shared not just verbally on the show, but through emails, is how to help kids cope with this or any kind of tragedy of this magnitude. The one thing I always try to talk about my experience, and I talk to my kids about it. We watch some stuff on TV about it, and I don't want to say they're nonchalant about it, but they kind of take it in stride. They're very mature kids. They're very smart kids. But should I be concerned that they're not really kind of asking questions? I ask them questions and tell them things about what's going on. But should parents be concerned that kids may kind of take it and maybe even departmentalize it within themselves? And is that a concern?
Well, I believe that kids are impacted by what's going on as much as adults, and maybe even more so, because their sense of safety and security is also being jeopardized. And my philosophy is to help children from the place that they're at. And so if it's a 6-year-old, you want to help them be able to express it either by drawing or talking or in any way possible how they're feeling. And sometimes it comes out in a drawing. And you'd be shocked if you heard some of the things that these young kids will come out with. Like they see it as being, the world's going to be attacked and divided into 20,000 pieces. I had a 6-year-old say that's what their fear is. And if you don't know that that's what they're afraid of, you can't help them understand that no one's going to divide the world into 20,000 pieces. It's not some alien that's going to do that. And that there are doctors who are figuring out how to treat this. And yes, we don't have a total handle on it yet, but they're working hard and we're finding solutions, and that's why we're staying home, because that's the best way to stay safe. And you explain it at a 6-year-old's level. And if you've got a 12-year-old, you explain it at a 12-year-old's level. And if you've got a 14-year-old, and each level, you can also talk with them about what they could do. And how they could help. And as the kids are older, it can be having them help you with things that are going on at home because you guys are under pressure. The parents are trying to work and take care of them, and if they help with their chores more, that would help. Or some kids are doing things like helping to make masks. Whatever it is, I have an idea to get teenagers to help mentor and tutor kids who are homeschooled and their parents are working and need a break, and use apps to connect with them and help them with their homework, or read books to younger kids. And so anytime we're feeling lost and sort of helpless as this kind of situation impacts on us. If we can do something, we feel stronger. We feel more resilient. We know even if we can't fix the whole problem, if we can do something to help, we'll all feel better. And so I encourage parents to figure out ways to let their kids know they can do something that will help. I'm working on a children's book for younger kids to help explain that to kids and help show them, talk about why they're staying home and what things they can do, even if they're 6 years old. So that's my philosophy. And teenagers are hiding in their rooms and playing video games to try to not think about it, but that doesn't mean they aren't scared. And the fact that they have a hard time talking about it, we all have a hard time talking about it. Our fantasies frighten us even more than maybe the reality. So we all have a hard time, but if we can talk about it, we can help them with it, and we can help ourselves with it.
Yeah, especially if you have a kid that is sort of aloof, or a kid that I don't want to get into my kids, but I mean just kids that just don't want to share, and you kind of have to find out some things about it. And this, in the midst of this type of thing, it could be even more extreme. I want to play something for you, a little bit long, but I do want to play this because I want to ask you questions about it and how you deal with if a mother came to you or someone came to you or even a relative of someone who died in this virus came to you immediately. What would be sort of the first things or steps you would take to help them? And this is from Stephanie Mills and MSNBC. Stephanie Rule, I should say, from MSNBC, talking with a mother who lost her daughter who was disabled, working to try to help people and died of COVID-19.
One Maryland family is enduring unimaginable grief right now after the sudden loss of their beloved family member. This is Leilani Jordan. She worked at a local grocery store, and despite the growing coronavirus pandemic, she insisted on doing her job to help elderly customers. Leilani died last week from coronavirus. She was in her mother's arms when she died. She was just 27 years old. Joining us now, Leilani's mother, Zenobia Shepard. Zenobia, I am so sorry for your loss. For those of us watching, we didn't get to know Leilani. Tell us about her.
She was my butterfly. Leilani wanted to help anyone that she came in contact with. So she said to me, Mom, no one's showing up to work. They're short-staffed. Mom, I have to take my own hand sanitizer because there's none available. There's no gloves available, Mom. Helping seniors put their grocery in their cart. Helping seniors to go to the restroom. Helping them to get the items that they're needing to get. She didn't discriminate on age. She didn't discriminate that she didn't even have the thought of. I don't think the education that they should have been given with regards to the coronavirus and the distancing. How can you say you're not going to help somebody that can barely walk to put the grocery in a grocery cart or to get in an Uber ride, that's probably also contaminated with the COVID virus, but to also to help someone go to the bathroom and to clean up after them in the bathroom, and you're already in a vulnerable class? Leilani worked at Giant's grocery store for 6 years. 6 years. 6 years. She worked there for 6 years, and no one knew just how much of an impact she made but the customers. No leadership is not going out of their way to protect the vulnerable class like the senior citizens that shop there for their vegetables or their provisions, and the people that are disabled that work there. Yesterday, they finally gave me Leilani's certificate of working there from Giant's grocery store for 6 years. They finally gave it to me yesterday. Just yesterday. She would have loved to receive this herself. Okay? Leilani's paycheck. I got her paycheck yesterday. Her paycheck yesterday for $20. $20.64. My baby's gone because of $20.64. You know what using the proper PPE could have done for my baby? $20 is all she got, so she worked from her heart. Customers have been finding me and calling me and telling me, thank you. You don't know what your baby did for us every day. You don't know the fact that she said to them, do you need any help? Let me help you. Nobody helped my baby. Nobody's helping the workers. Nobody's helping the workers to do their jobs to help them, but they're making the money. $20, one paycheck, 1 week. $20.64. And she's gone. They used a drug in the hospital called the hydroxychloroquine. Continuous drip did not work. She was too far gone. Too far gone.
Tell me, when did she start feeling ill?
I got into her cell phone, which she left unlocked and left me a message and told me how much she loved me and told me that she would never go back to Giant. She evidently started feeling sick between 16, 17, 18, 19. So the incubation period, it had already got her. When she went to the doctor, she collapsed. She went to Walter Reed, she collapsed in the parking lot. And when they picked her up and they took her in, they put her in isolation. Within less than 24 hours, she was immediately diagnosed as one of the worst cases of corona-19 virus. Who's protecting the workers? Why can't the companies and corporations provide the basic PPE? Close the bathrooms down. You can't even go to the pharmacy. I don't care if she worked at the dollar store. I don't care if she worked taking the trash out. You know, even the men in the sanitation, the male people, who's protecting them? That's my baby. And I can't get her back. If people are paying $20 to lose a life, $20. So you tell me what a great job she did. You tell me what a great job she did, Giant. And then you give me a pin. They gave me a pin, her 5-year pin that they should have given to her last year. Who's protecting them? Who's protecting the senior citizens that go in there every morning? You know, who's for giving the workers the gloves they need to put the food on the counter? Who's protecting them? Who's protecting their families? Who's protecting their families? Who's protecting the lower workers that make way less than the managers in the corporation? I just pray to God that this problem is fixed. Because if not, we have really got our hands full in this world. We're on a road of destruction. We've got to fix this, and I'm depending on your company to please put the word out. I'm a mother, and I have a hole in my heart for the rest of my life. My baby is gone.
Mrs. Shepard, I'm so sorry. I know you've set up a GoFundMe page because you want to help. Tell us about that.
I set up a GoFundMe page. My family helped me because Leilani had nothing. She had nothing. The GoFundMe page is to help this entire I have to pay for burial. It's going to take her probably maybe 5 to 6 months to get buried. 5 to 6 months to get buried. You can't handle a COVID funeral the way you can handle a regular funeral. That's why they're in body bags. What mother wants to lose their baby to a virus that we can't see? You have a mom. How would your mom feel if she had to bury you? Just think of it. If you had a special baby, a grandmother, no one wants to lose their loved one. But for $20.64, they could have bought a box of gloves to give to them. They could have kept that paycheck. So she did this from her heart, not for the money. Well, now her family needs financial help to recover. We need to recover. We need to recover. My baby left me a video, and for the rest of my life, I will always have that. That's my butterfly. That is my butterfly. Y'all gotta help. There's more butterflies in this world, old ones and young ones. Her dog, she has a service dog named Angel. Angel is running in circles. She's so depressed. She's looking for her mommy. She's looking for Leilani. Why my baby? You don't have the drug to treat this. We need help. We need resources to help the families.
Mrs. Shepard, we hear you. We're going to tweet out that link. Thank you for sharing your experience. Thank you for sharing Leilani with us. We're going to be right back with more. Thank you.
Welcome back to the show. Every time I hear that, and the first time I heard it, I didn't expect Dr. Barb to be so touched. And the first thing I think about was my kids. That's just the first thing on most parents when they hear a story like that. But this mother touched on so many tragic areas. Her daughter is disabled. She's gone above beyond in conditions. First of all, she's trying to help elderly people who are already going to be exposed. She's helping people doing overtime because other people won't come in. She doesn't have all the protection for herself, but yet she's going above beyond. She's not paid well. And that's a whole other issue for disabled workers that work in this country. And then she talks about the politics and all the things that are needed, and the fact that she has a hole in her heart for the rest of her life. And it's just compelling. Even when I hear it now, it stirs me up. So how do you handle someone like that comes to you and they just pour it all out? What is the first steps, the steps moving forward that you can help someone like this mother who tragically lost her daughter?
I'll tell you my reaction if I were in the room with her. I would probably just hold her. And that's not what you do in therapy most of the time. But in this situation, words may not help. She's so raw. It's so new. What she's saying is absolutely right on, that it shouldn't happen this way. And all you can do is join them as a human being and hold them and let them know that what they're feeling is right. They have every right to all of their feelings. And it takes time to be able to do the other steps that help someone to mourn and to move on in mourning. It's a process. It's a process that takes at least a year and longer. And unfortunately, we can't hold people in therapy now. We can tell them that that's what we would do. And we can encourage them that anyone who's living with them, they need to hold on to each other and just cry and feel it. And then there are other steps later on. She's in shock, in anger, in disbelief, and that's normal. And then you add this awful disease and the lack of supplies and the rage that she didn't have even gloves. I mean, there's no easy answer to this. And you just have to be a human being and let them know that you care. I can't give you anything more profound than that.
Yeah.
I mean, when you said, doctor, hold them in therapy, what does that mean? You can't hold them or keep them in therapy. I'm telling you that I would physically give her a hug. I would, if she wanted it.
Right.
And I would ask her if it was okay with her. But I would hold her and let her cry. It's painful to think that she was on television with I mean, I think Stephanie Rule did the best she could and tried to support her.
You can hear her crying in the background too.
Right.
Yeah.
But basically, I mean physically hold someone. And you can't do that on teletherapy. And that challenge is what therapists are dealing with. And there are people who have lost loved ones that are turning to therapy now. And all we can do is say, I would hold you and be there. It's sort of like when someone's at their deathbed, that you hold their hand and you're there, and it's not that you say very much. You can't. They know that you're there and that you care. And that's so we have to, as teletherapists, be containers for all that grief. And sometimes there are no words. Just as when you go to a funeral, sometimes there are no words. It's just being there. It's holding, giving a hug, holding, knowing that you made the time to be there. And we in this country all have to be there for the people that are grieving. That this is a tragedy for our nation, and we have to hold one another. Be there. We have to hear them and do whatever we can to make it better.
Does it make it hard for you, Doc? Does that make it hard? Well, let me backtrack. Is it ever a case, and this is sort of an extreme case, that you over empathize, that you get too close, where maybe you kind of lose your way and you have to kind of regroup yourself?
Those are the times, and that there could be times that you have to regroup yourself. Those are the times that therapists need to talk to their peers to be sure they're not overstepping their boundaries. Times in therapy, and grief is one of them, that the boundaries are be human. And you can't be a member of their family, but you can be human. And you take it case by case and how well you know the person, and you ask. I mean, if I were sitting in a room with someone who was in that stage of grief, I would ask them if they want me to hold them. And if they say no, then I'd just be there. And I'd say, I have few words to say because what you've gone through is awful. And just acknowledge their feelings.
Yeah.
So that's all you can do.
I got an email that asked anxiety. We talked about this on the previous show before about that. What do you tell the people who feel like, I guess this administration is looking to open up, if you will, the economy and get things going, open up businesses and stuff. And a lot of people are very concerned about that. I use the word concern. So how do you feel with people who are like, oh, my God, it's going to get even worse? So they really hunker down in their houses for fear that it's going to get worse, and they're protecting their kids and their loved ones and stuff. How do you deal with those people who think that maybe that might be a mistake and this thing could get even worse?
Well, I think there you're stepping into the area of politics and science, and I would say advise, if you're worried and you're anxious and you think that it's opening too quickly, then let your politicians know that you feel that way and that you want scientific research to clarify how you reopen society. The economy will survive. Economies have overcome pandemics. They've overcome wars. They've overcome the Great Depression. It takes time. It's not easy, but our economy will kick in when it's safe. And everyone needs to feel safe if they go back to work. And it needs to be done with clear testing that can be done rapidly if the government would work at it. And I think we have to have that, or else people will be terribly anxious. And justifiably so. This is an invisible enemy. Just pretend it's not here. And so we have to have safeguards. We need the protective equipment. That young woman, that 27-year-old young woman, needed the protective gear in order to be there. She was doing the right things for those people. She had a heart of gold. She was a wonderful, wonderful person. But she needed the protective gear, and that we all need to make sure that we expect that of our government. We expect that. Part of why we have laws and government, in order to protect us. And we talk about freedom. Today I wrote something about freedom. Freedom's a responsibility. It's not just a privilege. And in the same way that we have laws to prevent people from going out and killing people on the roads when they're drinking, and they'll go to jail if they do it. This is a pandemic. There are rules to stay home because it will save lives. It will protect the elderly. It will protect the people who have pre-existing conditions. And those who don't as well, dying, who don't have pre-existing conditions. And we have to protect them. And so ignoring the laws as if that's part of being free is ridiculous. Freedom is a responsibility, in the same way that when your kids get the privilege to drive, which gives them more freedom to move around and go places on their own, there are rules. They can't drive after a certain hour. They can't drive drunk. They can't drive with their friends until they've been a driver for a period of time in many states. Those are rules that make sense. That help you become responsible enough to have the freedom. And so freedom fighters are sitting at home now, fighting for the freedom for everyone to have life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness by staying home, by doing what the scientists tell us makes sense, what the doctors know will protect more people. And every life to me is
and freedom comes with accountability is basically what you're saying. I mean, you will be, responsible but accountable. If we hold people in society, in this country specifically, accountable for for their actions and the rules and regulations. We have to do the same, which is why I don't understand these protests. I have type 2 diabetes, so I have conditions, existing conditions, and so I'm always going to be concerned when these type of things take place. And certainly I don't, not just for me, but even because of my kids, I definitely don't want to infect them. I want to take those precautions, and I don't understand why people, even I've read and saw with those conditions, are protesting because they, it's just, it makes no sense, Dr. Barb. I understand people are closed in and they're not used to being with family and their spouse 8 hours, 10 hours a day, whatever the case may be, all the time. You wake up and they're all there, and people get upset. I know people are out of work and they need money and they're stressing about these things. But hell, you can't do anything if you're sick. So you can't work, you can't take care of your kids, you can't do anything. Exercise if you're sick, and God forbid fatalities happen. And that's why I don't get the whole protest thing. Just follow, like you said, those health professionals, those doctors are saying, look, if we do this now, it could be 10 times worse because we're going to spread. We know it can be dormant in people, and then all of a sudden people have the symptoms. They spread it to people. You mentioned young people, which concerns me with my preteens. So it just doesn't make any sense to me, Dr. Barb.
No, I agree. And again, that's sort of out of the realm of psychology, but it's still a part of how we handle this kind of traumatic event. And it's an unusual circumstance, but there have to be certain limits on our behavior. We can't just go out and do what we feel like if it's going to harm someone.
Exactly. Let's talk about something really good, what you're doing every Thursday right now, and it's really just having a conversation, inviting people to express themselves, just talk about what's on their mind. I was on the conference call last Thursday. It really helps just to kind of talk about things. It takes your mind away from everything that's going on, number one, and number two, it just talking about things. You tend to start talking about happy things, what's going on in your life, and I know for me, when I was on the conference call, I was talking about what me and my boys were doing, playing board games and video games. My kids, they love to beat me at everything. So if they can beat me, it makes their day. It's the Super Bowl of the day, and they just love, and they'll run it up, like they'll run the score up, or they'll just pound me because that's what they want to do. But it made me, it put a smile on my face, and it takes you away, especially for someone like me, like I said at the beginning of this interview, that, I have to deal with this and follow this for a media standpoint. But talk about what you do on Thursdays and how people can get involved.
Well, I decided just to offer a Zoom call Thursday mornings, 10 o'clock Eastern Standard Time. Anyone can register. It's free. And we'll talk about whatever's on people's minds about this virus and how to survive it and how to get through it with the least harm possible, just to make it doable and manageable, and come up with creative ideas to get through it. And I think that's one resource that I can offer in addition to therapy, that it's not therapy, but it's therapeutic. And I don't care how many people come. I think a lot of people are very busy, and it's hard for them to sort of fit it into their schedules or whatever, but just come and we'll talk and see how, where people are at and how to help them.
And if you can give out that link, I know we share it on our social media, but if you can give out that link. And to me, you can't be that busy. If you're complaining about being inside, you're getting frustrated, this is a way to get away from it. It only takes 2 minutes to log in and talk to you for 5 minutes or whatever, and then go about your day.
I can get the link to you. I can't do it right now. I don't know it off the top of my head, but I can get it to you.
No problem. No problem.
Let people know. Okay.
Yeah, we definitely have it. And Dr. Barb, listen, God bless what you're doing. I really appreciate what you're doing. A lot of people need, some people need therapy, but like you said, there's some therapeutic ways to get through this virus and tragedies and things that we're going through. But thank you so very much. I will be in touch. You be safe as always, and you and our good folks in Connecticut, and I will talk with you. Thank you, Dr. Barb.
Thank you for what you're doing, too.
Thank you.
Good night. Good night.
Dr. Barbara Lavi, of course, she is a clinical psychologist, best-selling author, and dream catalyst, talking about ways to deal with this virus to keep our sanity and keep our peace. And if you're a believer, you know how peace is important to us. 646-929-0130, the number to get in touch with us. Pad Nation, hit us up on Facebook. We're on Facebook Live. All those out there, DJ, see you, man, Miss Melendez, and some others out there. Appreciate you checking in and watching. We're going to switch gears, lighten the mood, because we need that, and go to some football. I got some former solid players from the Dallas Cowboys, Butch Johnson, and from the Steelers, Levon Kirkland. I'm going to talk about the NFL draft. The draft is coming up this coming weekend. We're going to talk about their experiences, finding out if their name's going to be called in the draft, and of course, what their prospective teams that they play for, what they think they're going to do in this coming NFL draft. We'll talk with them in just a bit. You're listening to the Batchelor News radio show.
Oh, baby, do you wanna make it better? body 4-year-old. It can survive on history alone. Yeah. Meet me at the hotel motel. So we got a room at home. Go to a place that we don't know so well. It'd be nice, add a little spice. Try some new seduction. Show each other how. Give each other new instructions on what makes us feel good now. I just wanna make you feel good now. Feel good, don't it? Come on. Do you wanna make it better? Wanna make it right? Come on. Do you wanna stay together? I meant when I said it. And it's easier to run away than to look for what would make you stay. Do you wanna make it better? Do you wanna stay together? If you do, then let's please make some new memories. Do you wanna make it better? Do you wanna stay together? If you do, then let's please make some new memories. Do you wanna make it better? Wanna stay together? If you do, then let's please make some new memories. Do you wanna make it better? Do you wanna stay
Oh yeah. I would like to get to know if I could be the kind of girl that you could be down for. 'Cause when I look at you, I feel something tell me that you're the kind of guy that I should make a move on.
I get exotic with the melodic tune. I get hypnotic with the moon, but you got to put me down soon. I flip a sideshow if you come my way. Up, down, and around, even sideways. I'm about as ready as the light can get. We can go all out. I ain't afraid of the sweat, but yet I bet you got the techniques to freak a girl inside out. What's that all about? Can I have some of that? You gotta put me on. Word around town is your 9 men strong. I wanna be put on in the worst way. Since the first day, I think it was a Thursday. You be that brother that I wanna sink my teeth in. Make me wanna ask, where the hell you been? I like the way you be with all that personality, but I got flavor too. You need to go with me.
What you going through? I wanna be down. I wanna be down with you. Oh yeah, it's true. I wanna be down. I wanna be down. Oh yeah.
He was born 20 years ago, just a pimp toes. Everyday new clothes, look at the cut, cool pose. On creek out the heat, so bluffing. Slanging patties, because it's more than 20 ducats. Struck it, kinda rich, now his pockets looking straight. Slam the D's on the benzo, pancake by the gate. Mom looking straight with her half, she got great. Lounging in her new home, that's about the state. I'll be your cornmeal, won't tell. You can get it when you want it, even though you got chicks all up on it. Don't matter, 'cause brother, you fly. I can't lie, I've been macking daddy from the corner of my eye. Now, baby, bring it on, don't be frontin' on your baby boo. All I wanna know is what's up with you. How can I get with you? Seems like you got a hold on me. It must be voodoo, 'cause baby, I want you.
Down with you.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. I wanna be down with you. No matter what. Oh yeah.
Here it comes now, and it don't stop.
I wanna be down.
About day short, about day 4. all about so big, about so small, about this length, about this width, about this flow, about this gift. Instinct leading me right up your alleyway. Skip the Moet, let's chill with some Alizé. Enough stressing all day. Let me massage your mind as my mental starts to play. A ghetto sauce is you are, and I'll be your sexual chocolate bar. And I gotta keep strong for the cause, and you gotta keep me strong for the tours. Brother, man, and me, damn the family. What else could we be with no one understands us but we? You were the first to tame me. Big teeth, I'm out. I wanna be down. Oh yeah, oh yeah. I wanna be down. I wanna be down with you. Light it through. Oh yeah, I wanna be down with you. Hey, here we go, here we go, here we go now. And it's on, yeah, and you don't stop. Brandy is in the house and you don't stop.
Welcome back to the Batchelor News Radio Show. Thanks to our guests. I want to bring in my good friend, longtime friend, and colleague from the Gray Leopard Cove. He not only does news and politics and sports, but also plays music, and you got to check him out. We'll get his information over the airwaves on Blog Talk. He is G&G or Double G, Gary Norris Gray. Gary, what's up, man?
Hey there, how you doing?
G, you wrote an article on the president and the way he is not only handling this virus, but the fact that he's acting like a 3-year-old. You can talk about the topic of the article and what the article specifically is about in just a sec. But I played a excerpt of a mother, and I think you heard it. A mother whose daughter was disabled and died. She worked at Giant. If you're familiar, you from Jersey, so you know what Giant is. The markets there, the supermarkets there. Worked there. She had no gloves, yet she stayed. She worked overtime to help disabled people. To help elderly people, which are in that group of either pre-existing conditions or just being vulnerable to this virus. Stayed to help them get to their cars, help them with their groceries and everything. And she died. Her last check was $20. Her mother talked about that. So you being disabled and African American, which that's the double whammy I always talk about with you, and I respect you so much for what you're doing and how you do it. But you understand that the two discriminations that are going on there. She was. Talk about that before you get into the article.
Well, okay. African American disabled people are in a double bind. What I mean is this. White people don't like us because we're black. Black people don't like us because we're disabled. A friend of mine in Berkeley said we are on the outskirts of society. My friend Leroy Moore. Leroy Moore is a black psychologist who's also disabled. Right? He told me we live on the outskirts of this nation. He said when you go to Africa, disabled people are royalty. When you go to Asia, disabled people are royalty. When you go to Europe, it's a little bit lower, but we treat it nicely. But in America, you are nothing. And this is the problem with the United States. Number one, they don't deal with disability very well. Number two, race is the issue. They put that together, and we're on the outskirts.
And Gary, you talk about your article is entitled "Food Fight in Washington." You got a telling picture of Donald Trump from Time Magazine. He's looking, I guess, apparently in a mirror, and what the reflection is, he's got a crown on.
Yep.
And it says King Me. And it talks about you growing up. You talk about growing up in South Jersey, so you know what time it is. And you talk about your childhood going to a summer camp for disabled people.
Yeah.
And, you know, even in that realm, Gary, even in that realm, there's a divide because, okay, this group came from this part of the hood, the other came from the other part of the hood, and you guys got into a food fight. And this is the childish, and you guys were kids, and this is the childish way of this so-called leader of the free world that either you side with him and kiss his ring, like Don Corleone in The Godfather, or you will be ostracized and chastised and be kicked to the curb, as we see not only with this governor in Michigan specifically, but the MAGAs, right? We know who they are, who are protesting against her. You know, so that this is where we are in terms of taking care of the people of this country with this virus. We're in a pissing contest, and it starts at the top.
LA, we are in a very dangerous situation. What I mean is this: you have a president of the United States who will not listen to his cabinet, who will not listen to his advisors, who will fire his advisors if he doesn't agree with him. This is our president. Trust me, if Barack Obama does the same thing, you've been railroaded out of the office quickly. And see, America is going back to its roots.
And you know, Gary, the other thing, you real quick, what needs to be said too, and you can speak on this, is that the number of cases for African Americans that people decide to take in terms of the numbers, because the CDC is not really doing it. If you go to the CDC, it's not specific to any ethnic groups, in particular African Americans, but the number for black folks with this virus is alarming, and I'm being nice, alarming. And then you add in the fact that if you are someone like yourself, living in a predominantly a black neighborhood, or knowing those situations, it's got to be exasperated even more. It's got to be even 10 times worse when you get into African Americans. Then you get into specific groups of African Americans. It's got to be even enormously worse.
Well, you have to be accepted. Remember when you went to junior high school? People looked at you as a new kid on the block in the first year of high school or first year of junior high school. This is where we are every day. We're the first kid out of high school every day. After that, it gets mentally trying, because you have to prove yourself every single day. That's why I identify with athletes, because athletes have to make themselves known every single day. Michael Jordan had to prove himself. LeBron James had to prove himself. BK Tupac had to prove himself. Okay? We do this every day. Nothing new.
Gary, I got to ask you about part. I want to read one of the paragraphs in your article. We'll talk with Gary Gray here on the Batchelor News radio show. You said, and I'm quoting it. I know you didn't put it in quotes, but I'm quoting. COVID-19 is Mother Nature's way of informing the world things need and have to change. The world needs to slow down, smell the flowers, listen to the birds, and feel the warmth of the sun, and be nice to each other. This virus does not care if you're in a red state or a blue state, male or female, adult or child, black or white. It does not care who you voted for this past November and who you will vote for in 2020. This virus does not care if you are a good person or bad. It just kills and disables people, end quote. Are you looking at just the one thing that touched me about that, I think is very compelling, is that you took it to nature's way, but if you're a believer, like it sounded kind of spiritual. Are you speaking a little more than just nature when you were talking about that particular part?
Yes. Okay. Look. Spell the word corona, right? How many letters are corona?
No, you tell me before I have to count.
Six.
Right.
6. You put corona out, and you put the number of the alphabet next to the number of corona, and it comes out 66.
Wow.
What does 6 mean?
Wow.
This is kind of stuff people don't think about. 6. Yeah,
and you think about it too, Gary. Some people feel like this current occupier of the White House is the Antichrist, and that's a whole different discussion for a whole different day. And you're not the first one to say that. I have to be honest about that, Gary. I've had people, I'll just say spiritual people, that say, we're in times. We don't know that until, if you're a believer, until that time comes. But it's very. I thought that was very compelling that you mentioned that. What do you think of this president? And you mentioned New York and California, and where the governors who are at the forefront, they're getting a lot of praise of the way they're handling things. I know it's a lot of criticism coming down on your governor there in California. I know in Oaktown that he is saying, look, we're not even going to have sports anytime soon until next year. And a lot of people, including these sports commissioners and these owners, are like, wait a minute, we got some big time money out there. He's getting criticized for that. But talk about that. These two in particular, and then you have other states that are doing the right thing. And my good state of Connecticut, they're following leads from Cuomo and Jersey and that kind of thing. But talk about that, because there's some political decisions that will be made moving forward for these governors making these decisions, if the people, and that's a big if the people of those states feel like they're going overboard, like in particular with Michigan.
Well, what we saw today or yesterday in Michigan and Virginia and Wisconsin was rebellion, complete rebellion. Let me explain this. If black men walk down the street with AK-47s, like these white guys did, they'd be dead. The inequities of racial harmony is so unbalanced. And what this president has done has pushed that button. And when you push that button, you better know what you're doing. What he has generated was a complete backlash. Those people in Virginia and Michigan are walking down the street with face masks and guns without opposition.
One of the things, Gary,
we can't do that, right? We can't do that.
Right, and one of the things I said, first of all, again, we here on the broadcast were talking about this virus back in November of last year. But having said that, one of the things I was concerned about and people kind of poo-pooed is that, certain places or even the country can be under martial law because there are going to be people that are going to fight this thing for the sake. See, Americans of all ethnic groups, Gary, if you agree, we have this. We're bigger than everything. We can overcome everything. We're not going to live in fear. All that rhetoric that goes into it, right? We're tough. We're Americans, and you're not. That type of thing. And when you have that mentality, it's okay not to live in fear. Who wants to live in fear? The scriptures say we shouldn't live in fear. At the same time, you have to be smart, right? Higher powers don't tell you to be stupid about it. You have to be smart about things. So you cannot live in fear, but you have to be responsible and accountable for your actions and situations and people that you can affect. Like I said on this broadcast, I'm type 2 diabetic. Not only do I not want to die, I don't want to affect my kids, right? So we have to be responsible. And Americans don't want to do that. Certain Americans, some Americans, because we feel we're Americans and you're not. We're bigger than the virus. We're bigger than 9/11. We're bigger than anything that comes, and we could just stick our chests out and our testosterone, if you're a man, and just deal with it and get over it and just move forward.
Let me say this. You have 2 sons. I know that you set your son down as boys. You have to be careful what you do and what you say and how you say it.
That's right.
I gotta tell you a story. One day I was going back from the door. I was bringing a shopping cart back to the door. I wasn't going away from the door. I was going to the door, returning the shopping cart. An officer stopped me and said, "Where are you going?" "Where are you going?" I'm going to the door, officer, sir." "Why are you going?" "I'm returning the cart to the door, sir." Okay? Now, why would you stop somebody in the middle of the street with an empty shopping cart? See, again, because he could, he did. That's what we're dealing with. As a black person, this is what we're dealing with.
And, it makes no sense, like you said, that he would stop you about a shopping cart. And Gary, that speaks to, and I know you didn't touch specifically on this, but the racial profiling that's going on with the mask. I think you touched on it in this conversation tonight in terms of, wearing a mask. That as I mentioned to our law enforcement folks that come on the time, Chief Humphrey, Chief Green, I said, listen, you're either racist or you're very stupid as a law enforcement person, as a police officer, whatever you want to call it, because the virus is going on. Most, if not every state, is having specific precautions that are going on. The CDC is finally saying, even if you're out in the public, you leave you in your garage or on your front porch, put a mask on, right? So if you're wearing a mask because of the virus and it's all over the country, why in the hell would you stop somebody if they're walking down the street, going towards a store, in a parking lot of Walmart or whatever, and they got a mask on? You're either very stupid, right? And I don't believe that, or you're very racist. And if you're black, then you more blue than you black, and that's a whole nother conversation, Gary.
Well, I was getting ready to go there. I have a cousin who was an officer in the police department in New Jersey, and his deal is this: I'm not gonna bother you unless you break the law.
Right, simple as that.
I'm not gonna bother you if you break the law. And see, you have some white officers in this country who take advantage of the blue. When you're wearing the blue, they take advantage of You have Ku Klux Klan members in the police department. Known Ku Klux Klan members that need to stop.
Yeah, and the fact is that exists is certainly going to be exasperated when those Klansmen, as you mentioned, with badges and guns, can take advantage of the fact they want to hurt or incarcerate those people of color. And that's one of the biggest problems. Gary, we're going to post the article. I got the finished touches up there. Thank you, sir, very much, on our website. But also let people know about your show and how they can listen and when they need to listen.
Well, I like to make one last point on this article about the governors of California and New York. The governors of California and New York are working with the people of California and New York to make it a better place. That's what the President of the United States is supposed to do. Make this a better place, not make it a battle zone, which is what he's doing. Gary Gray, Gray of the Cove, BlogTalkRadio.com, every Saturday at 1, and Sunday the music show at 4 Pacific time.
Gary, you do a phenomenal job as always, man. I love you. Be safe. If you can hang on the line, we got Butch Johnson on the line. Talk some football. If you can, that would be awesome. If not, I understand. Raiders. But the Gary Norris Gray always got great L Raiders. So you got to get that Raider stuff in there. I know Butch ain't gonna like that, and I certainly don't. I'm a Steeler fan. But Gary Norris Gray, of course, the Gray Leopard Cove. You can check it out, as he mentioned, blogtalkradio.com. Take a quick break. Come back. Get former Dallas Cowboy wide receiver, kick returner, punt returner Butch Johnson on the line on the Batchelor News Radio.
Increase your yields by using Conklin's Guardian slow-release nitrogen additive. Guardian holds your nitrogen in the root zone where it's needed over a longer period of time. That, in return, can reduce your nitrogen rates. That saves you money. And whether you want it in a dry or liquid formula, Guardian helps in reducing groundwater contamination, too. So save your money and be a good steward all at the same time by using Conklin's Guardian. Back to the show. Thanks for joining us. We appreciate you. Don't forget, if you missed any part of the broadcast, you can go to thebachelornews.airtime.pro, the podcast of their show and every show there, including the Donaldson Files with Tom Donaldson and Coco Cosney. Of course, Barry Barnes, Locker Report with Barry Barnes, talking some NFL draft. We'll have him on Thursday. And Dr. Larry, the Dr. Larry Show with Dr. Larry Fidowa. You and the Law will be coming up next Tuesday. If you're on our e-blast and email address, you can get the information there. Lots of shows, lots of different topics, and different ways of looking at things here on the Batchelor News Radio Network. Back to the phones. He's a former Dallas Cowboy wide receiver. kick returner, punt returner, I think is very underrated. He is Butch Johnson. And Butch, appreciate you coming on, sir.
Oh, no, man, it's always a pleasure to be on your show, man. You have the best people in the nation come on your show, man, and it's always an honor to come on it, man. You rock and roll, man. You've been doing it for a while.
Thank you so much. Myself and Gary Gray on the line. We're limited time, but I do want to ask you first, how are things where you are in Texas? How are things in terms of what they're doing, stay at home, and some of the fatalities, unfortunately?
Well, we're like everybody else, man. I mean, it's been a tragic time for everybody, and it breaks your heart, man, because you can't do anything, or you can't go anywhere, or you can't see anybody, you can't do all those things. We're just like everybody else, and I know it's really hard back there in New York and the East Coast because it's such a density, and my hometown, like L.A., that's starting to kick in. You know, the density of people that are there. The one thing in the Texas area is it's more spread out of people, but it doesn't mean like it's not going to be there or the virus isn't there, and it's happening. I don't think we know as much as we should know, personally. I think that this has been going on for a while, and, to catch up to it is impossible. When I hear an administration say, I'm not trying to get political here, but factual, is we've done 3 million tests where there's 340 million people in this country. So they don't know who's out there. And there just doesn't seem to be the ability to get it together. 340 million people, and nobody knows who's who. So in north central Texas, people have been staying at home. It's like an empty thing. And in L.A., my oldest son he lives in Sacramento, and happened to go down to L.A., and he said, Dad, there isn't a car on the freeways. Now, L.A. has 10-lane highways, and there's no cars.
Yeah. And, if you talk about the political side of it, your governor, Greg Abbott, did, the concern is that in your state of Texas, that if he follows the administration from a Republican standpoint, that maybe they open up things in Texas could be dangerous. Speaking of that, Dak Prescott got slammed about having a party with Ezekiel Elliott and some other people, 30 people. It was posted on video. He mentioned, and he stands by, and the reports now are that it was, 10 people or less. That's what he's saying. We talked off there about the responsibility and the understanding as a young man, as a young person, with the money that he could potentially make. We know that he wants that max money, and they're franchising and all that kind of things, and all of that negotiation going on. But the responsibility, maybe not Butch having a Butch Johnson or someone, right? And especially Dallas folklore that can say, look, Dak, these are the things you should do, and these are the things you shouldn't do. Does that play a part in the maturity of a Dak Prescott or someone like that, especially in a case like this, which is so serious where people are dying?
Everything I've seen of him over the last 3 years is been exceptional. He reminds me a lot of Warren Moon, basically. And Warren Moon was probably one of the greatest quarterbacks that ever lived. And that's who he reminds me of. And he can throw the ball, and he has this leadership ability and that type of thing. The other problem that most people don't understand is that, and this is the difficulty of professional sports, is that when you graduate from college, everybody is 22 years old. When you get your master's degree out of college, if you continue your education, you are 25 years old. If you get your doctorate and you go for your doctorate and get that, you're now 27 years old. Well, if you play in the NFL for 3 years, you're 25 years old. It is your first job, period. It's your first job. So what knowledge do you know of what to do or what not to do? The problem with playing in the NFL is you become in a bubble. You're around 45 other guys. You're not around the people that work at the stadium, which is 400 people in the organization. You're around your guys. So you're isolated down like on an island if you play in the NFL, and you're in a bubble. And that bubble is what you guys do together. So if he had 10 or if he had 20, he's around the same 20 guys who probably practice together, see each other every day, do everything, and they don't see that. The other thing is, it's in his house. And who's in his house? He's trying to break a little break of what the tension is with everybody else. Now, I understand shouldn't have 10 more people in there or whatever. But what I'm saying is these guys don't see that, and you got to remember, even if he's making $33 million, or if that's the case, he's 25 years old, out of college, 3 years. What were you doing at that time? What were you doing at that time? So you have to look at it in that perspective, and that's completely forgotten because the only thing I've ever heard, I hear all the time, and for the last 50 decades, is how much money is made, how much money is, and that equates to how this person should be. I don't know how that works when you're 25 because they haven't lived long enough to know what they want to be. So that's the dynamic that he has to work with. On the other side of it, there isn't people educating him to say, you cannot do this. You cannot do this. Y'all can't do this.
And but
so many people.
And Butch, I remember Ray Lewis almost went to jail for his homie, right? Being immature even at that stage of his career. He was already a great linebacker, of course, Hall of Famer. Thinking that it's more important to go to prison instead of his boy. And that speaks to maturity. But again, doesn't seem like the NFL is, well, maybe not the NFL, maybe it's not necessarily they should play in the responsibility of that. But guys just take it upon themselves. There's a gap between Butch Johnson and Dak Prescott where there are mentors saying, look, bro, when you get in the league, you're going to have a lot of honeys coming at you. You're going to have a lot of this and that. You need to know what's going on, and here's what I went through. Here's what I don't want you to go through.
Yeah, it's not the first time, man. I mean, like, over the history of sports, it's been that way. And the problem with it is that people are following the guys that are older. And you might think it's him, but he's following the guys that are older, and then what you do and how you do it. Just like anybody else. If there's a senior in high school, because the only thing you have from leadership, if you played football all your life, right? So if you played in Pop Warner, well, the guy in the 9th grade made everybody understand what to do in the 7th grade. If you played ball in the 10th grade, then the guy that was a senior showed the way of everything you should do. If you're in college, same thing. You're a freshman, you're watching the seniors. Well, if you get out of college, you haven't made any money at any time in your life. You've been playing ball, so you're following the guys that are older than you. If you don't know, those guys don't know any more than you. The longer they're in, it's like if you're in the NFL, the longer you're in, it's like going to prison. And I'm not saying because you're sitting in prison. I'm saying because you're isolated away from the natural environment of the public. There's nothing like prison.
But let me ask you about this though. When you think about that, and we talked about this off air too. Talked with Butch Johnson, a former great with the Dallas Cowboys. That if you come from an environment where I grew up in the projects, right? If you come from that neighborhood. And you're not used to having that money, but you want to take care of the family. Part of that family might be your cousins and your homeboys. So you still surround yourself around people that are not mature, that's going to have the best interest for you long term.
Right, and they would never know. They don't know the environment because you only have 1,500 people. And that's the thing that people really can't wrap their head around, because the number one thing in this country is always money, always money, always money, always money, always money, always money. Okay, that's it. So it's what you're doing. But if you look at the entertainment business and you look at everybody else, how can you explain to people you came up? I came up in South Central. I grew up in Crenshaw. I went to Dorsey. So I'm from the deep neighborhood. That's where I'm from. So with that said, is that I didn't know anything about who to trust. But we trusted each other in the neighborhood, and that's the way it went down. But I didn't understand the people at this level. You're one of 1,500 guys. There are 1.5 million lawyers in this country, and you're one of 1,500 guys in the nation. So how many people can tell you how to act? How many people can tell you how to walk?
Right.
How many people can tell you how to talk? We're gonna find. You can't find people like that in your neighborhood. You can't find people like that in your neighbors. You can't find people like that in your family, because it's so rare that it happens. It's like a musician. When it happens, they're so rare. It's just you can't. It's a whole lifestyle that's completely different. You would say to yourself, well, you guys all hang out together, the whole league. I can tell you in my career, there was very few guys I hung out in the locker room with, because it was a job. It's not a career. A career is what you do for 30 years. This is a job. And if you get the average playing days in the NFL is 2.3 years, if you're lucky, 2.3 years. That is not a career. You are now 25 years old. So you earn your master's. That's my point.
Right.
It is,
and you know, if you go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I was gonna say, and you know, we grew up in those tough neighborhoods, and you know, I know cats that I grew up with that either are dead or in jail, and I was blessed enough and fortunate enough to not be in that category, and move forward. But again, you not understanding. Okay, that's where you were, but that not have who you have to be, and to tag along with those guys that are going to have your downfall because they really about the money, then it's hard to understand that. I want to go to Gary Gray from the Gray Leopard Cove. I know, Gary, you have questions for Butch Johnson and, of course, Tony McClean on standby.
Go ahead.
It's an honor and privilege, Dr. Billy Johnson. I watched you play when I was a little kid. My question to you is this. Are there father figures in each team or father figures that players can go to and talk to every day?
No, that's actually a great question. Is to say, are they father figures to go to? You look at it in this perspective. I was in the NFL for about 11 years. Okay, but when I came out of the NFL, I'm like 33 years old. Now think about that. I can't be a father figure to a guy that's 31 or 30 or 29 or 28 or 27 or 26. And once you're out of the game, then you can't go to games in the NFL. You're not a part. They say you're a part of the alumni, but you're not a part of anything. You're not allowed to go into the locker room. It's a job. So it's like any other corporation that employees, if you're employees there, you go in, right? If you get fired, you pack up your desk, you take your boxes, and you're out. So people think, well, this is a happy camper like high school. We're all, but that ain't the game. This is a job, not a career, a job. That's what it is. So when you get terminated at whatever age, like what's happening today, the 22 million people that have been terminated in the country, they're out. That's what you are. You're out. You're not in the family for the next 50 years. You're not an alumni. You're an alumni, but you're not a part of the family. You're not an alumni. You don't work with the organization anymore. So there's a complete separation. There's a complete separation because you can't find guys, man. Once you're out, you're out. And, yeah, you could say, well, we should be friends. That's not true. That just doesn't happen. And it hasn't happened in my lifetime. So.
My last question is, what do we do with the African-American quarterback in the NFL? We know that the African-American quarterback can play. We know they can lead a team. We know that we can win. So how do we deal with this?
Okay. Did you say what is happening with the average quarterback or
the African-American quarterback?
How do you evaluate a quarterback?
No,
I can't.
No, the African American. He's asking, how do we value the African American quarterback at this point?
You know, I don't even think that's the issue anymore. When I played, it was a 20% black and then 80% white population. And one of the first black quarterbacks was in L.A. He played for the Los Angeles Rams at that time period. It was in the early 70s, I believe. And when he was doing that, I mean, he broke the barrier, and then guys came in. I think that what I've seen in the past few years, I mean, probably one of the greatest quarterbacks that's ever played the game is Warren Moon. He had pinpoint accuracy. He threw left-handed. Played in Canada his first 5 years, and won 5 championships in the Canadian Football League. And he isn't glorified as much as everybody else. And I believe most people don't even talk about him. I don't get it. Probably, as far as a black quarterback, if you want to put it that way, he was the greatest this game has seen. And I'm really proud of him because I played Pop Warner at the same Pop Warner League in L.A., in West L.A., in Culver City, the Baldwin Hills League. So this guy was phenomenal. And he didn't get the credit he deserved. The problem is, in most cases, is like anything else, it's a matchup. And you can get lucky in a matchup. You know, it's like Tom Brady. You know, he got lucky with the right coach at the right time. So, and that's with anything. At that level, you got to remember, 1,500 guys, you got to wrap your head around that we're talking about 5 guys trying to match up with one guy. It just, sometimes it happens and sometimes it doesn't. Another example would be the guys down in New Orleans, of course. I mean, they've been on it for a while. I think Holmes, he's probably the closest thing I've seen to Joe, not only Joe Montana, but Joe Namath that I've seen in 50 years. And he is so good, man. He is so good. It's scary. And he's only in his 3rd year or whatever he's in, but he is phenomenal, man. So there will be more, but the problem is once you get in that slot or once you get in that position like a Russell Wilson, I mean, you got to play, man. It's like everybody else. And if you don't play, or it's the wrong coach, or it's the wrong system, it's going to happen, man. But I've seen a lot of great guys come out, and Cunningham, for me, was probably, in my time period, was probably one of the best I've ever seen. I mean, he's just phenomenal, man. Could do everything, and he was way ahead of his time. And you got to look at it in that way too. There's a lot of these guys like Doug Williams who are way ahead of their time, and as things progress, it depends on it depends on what the coaching staffs are thinking of and what the folks are thinking of upstairs. I mean, in my evaluation, it's gotten to the point now when you see an 80% black influence within that league versus you could say that statement probably, 50 years ago or 40 years ago or even 30. But now it's an 80-20 shift. And the league and the rules are so different that I don't think it really matters. Because Drew Brees, and when I played, wouldn't have survived. He wouldn't have survived. I'm using that because of the rules. He's a great quarterback, but the rules provided him the opportunity to do things at his statue that probably wouldn't have happened at that time period because it was so dangerous and it was so brutal that his body couldn't have taken what was going on.
Great point. And, I know Bradshaw had talked about, as I go to Tony T-Mac McClain, Bradshaw talked about how, Dan Fouts, who I'm a big fan of, Dan Marino, who I'm a huge fan of, and even the guy you play with, Roger Staubach, they would have threw for 5,000-6,000 yards every year if they had the rules that are going on, taken away from the defense, which I like that side of the ball, and giving the offense where you can't touch the receivers and you can't even breathe towards the quarterbacks without getting fined. Tony T-Mac McClain.
Mr. Johnson, thanks for joining us. We're a couple of days away from the draft. You were talking about influences in the locker room, and it's a different dynamic now. What would you, if you had a chance to talk with for the guys coming out now, what would be the main thing you would want to relate to them in regards to making the transition from college to the pros on and off the field?
Well, if it was me, I'd sit them down and tell them the truth, and that's what doesn't happen.
Mm-hmm.
Let me put it this way. I was in a meeting, and we were at a team meeting one time, and I had to be in my second year, or my first or second year, I don't remember. But at the time, Tom Landry, who was our head coach, got up in the meeting, and he said to us, he said to all of us, he said, look, we were losing. We had lost 2 games in a row, and we had lost 3 games in a row, 2 games in a row. We never lost 3 games in the history of my career. So he says, I want to tell you guys something. If you're playing like this right now, and you continue to play like this, you have to remember that you are the migrants of the game. We are the transients of the game. Meaning that you will be, by the time you figure out where you are, you're out. Because when you're looking at a guy who's 22 years old, coming out of college, he's 25, he doesn't know what a job is. Mm-hmm. Now, all of a sudden, he's in a job where the average salary is $2.3 million. He thinks that's normal. He believes that's normal because he's looking at guys who have salaries of 14, 15, 16 million, or 30 million, and he feels he's underpaid. But he thinks it's normal coming there at 22, and who wouldn't? That at 2.3 million, if you have 2.3 million for 3 years, it's like $5 to $6 million by the time you're 25. Mm-hmm. They think it's normal because they're around people who are making triple that, so they think they're the poor ones of the group.
Right.
You follow me?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
You see, because it don't matter where you go. If you've been in the radio, you've been in television, you've been whatever you're doing in the media, there's a pecking order as you go up. in any industry. So now all of a sudden, you went from college poor to 2.3, and you still think you're poor because you're looking at guys that are making 15, 20 million. I got to follow him. Even though he doesn't know.
And it seems like now the dynamic has changed because, when you came in, you had guys that have been in the league, say, 8, 10 years at a time. Now they're coming in, and somebody that's been in the league, say, 3, 4, maybe even 5 years, is considered the grizzled veteran. There are no grizzled veterans now. It's literally, maybe this is a terrible way of saying it, but it's almost, babies playing with babies in a sense,
Well, that's exactly right, who know nothing. Who are isolated in an environment every day. They don't go out, you can't go out. Secret Service tells them you can't go out, you can't be here, you can't be there, you can't be there. So you're in college, right? And now you're coming out, and now the smartest thing, that a lot of them are doing, they get their PhD at 28, and they say, I'm gone. I collected my $100 million, and I'll spend the rest of my life doing this. How are you going to manage that? Versus concussion, versus 17 knee surgeries, versus whatever else is going on with people. It's a different day.
Yeah.
So but the one thing I would say to that is like every year you refuse to take money, you can never recover that money. No matter what who's telling you at 25, you can never recover that money. So if you passed on the 33, even though you said, well, I need 40, well, you need 40, but you passed on 33, which means you lost 28. That's what it is.
You're literally chasing your tail financially a lot of times.
Yes. That's exactly right. And so you're passing on something that's clean. This isn't like running a dealership where you have 60 people working for you, and then you collect 33. No, it's clean. This is movie clean. This is entertainment clean. So that's not going to come back. Even if you get 40, you lost 28. That's the problem, is that you don't understand that at 25. You're thinking, well, I'm going to get 40 and then I'm in the league and everybody knows. No, they don't notice you any more than they notice anybody else.
Right.
That's the game that is played, man. And that's the bubble. So once you get into the bubble, you think, okay, then I'm looking at this guy on the other side of the locker room, or I'm looking at this guy over here, and I should be doing, well, that's not the game. The game is longevity. Longevity through the organization, through what's happening. And the good guy for at least the Cowboys, who's a great example of that, is Jason Witten. This guy's went to the point where he's played 13 years, and then he left a year, and then he came back, and he collected another $5 million. Forget he's 36. Because he's been there so long. But he's a young man. It's like a guy getting out of law school, right?
Yeah.
So he collected all this money, and he played the thing right. But somebody told him how to do that. And that doesn't happen. That's the thing.
Thank you.
So going back
Butch,
to the...
before you go, real quick, we're running out of time here, but real quick, if you can talk about it, because I think taking it back in time, I know we got Levon Kirkland on the line, but when you think back about the draft, you think about the anxieties and the things that went into. Talk about that, and then the second part of that is talk about what you think the Dallas Cowboys today, this week, should do in the current draft.
Okay. Well, draft for me was not in my equation going into college. Okay, I can first say that. I went to the University of California, Riverside, prestigious colleges, 10 colleges in different locations in the state of California. At that time period, it was ranked the number one colleges in the nation, in the world. And our campus was on Riverside. We were a Division II school that had a football program. That's the reason why I went there. And my whole purpose of going there was to get a degree in psychology. I wanted to be a sports psychologist, and it's what I wanted to do. I enjoy research. at the end of the day, I'm going through my career, and I'm going through my playing days. And in my senior year, I got hit in the thigh, and it started to calcify. So I could only get 8 games in. And I ended up leading the nation in receiving that year in both yardage and career catches and touchdowns, but I only had to play 8 games. But I led the nation in receiving at Division II. So the scouts came out, and they would come out, man, and it wasn't like going to USC where they're out there all the time. And at the end of the day, there's probably 125 scouts that came out to check me out. And I'm not thinking much of it because I'm thinking, well, maybe a free agency thing, or maybe somebody might choose me, or somebody might like me. Well, maybe the San Diego Chargers, or maybe San Francisco, or somebody on the West Coast. That's kind of what my mindset was at because, at that time period, you had 17 rounds. So it wasn't like 7 or whatever the other day, 7 or whatever. You had 17 rounds. So I'm thinking, okay, Division II school, all the stuff that's happening, leg hurt, this is what's going to happen, right? So I'm sitting that day, and in that time period, we didn't have cell phones because you had to sit by the phone. So I walked out. I said, man, I need to take a walk. And I took a walk that day and had a young lady in my apartment with me, and I said, man, I'm going to go take a walk and see what happens. So the draft came up, but there's no television for the draft. So it was a phone call. I mean, that's what it boiled down to. The general manager or the VP or coach would call you. And the later the round, that's who would call you. So after that walk that morning and the draft started, I got a call and from Cleveland, the Cleveland Browns, and they said to me, well, if you're still there in the 4th round, we're going to take you. Would you mind playing behind Paul Warfield? And I'm thinking to myself, are they fucking kidding me? Excuse my language. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry, man. I didn't mean this, but
it's all right.
I'm sorry, man. That was a mistake. But I'm thinking that way. I mean, Paul Warfield, greatest receiver of all time, and Paul Warfield. So I said, yeah, that would be nice. So then I get a call. A second phone call comes in, and I get a call from the San Diego Chargers. I'm thinking that would make the most sense to me because I'm like 90 miles away from there, or 60 miles away from there. And that's why I was hoping that I would play because I could be close to family in L.A. You know what I mean? I was just a young guy. So the third call came in, and it was Tex Schramm. And he says, Butch, is this Butch Johnson? I said, yeah. And he says, well, this is Tex Schramm. I didn't know who Tex Schramm was. He says, of the Dallas Cowboys, we just drafted you in the 3rd round. And I'm sitting there shaking, man, because I'm saying, wait a minute, 3rd round, Division II school, my football program, the week after the last season game, quit football. They quit the program at the end of my senior year. So I'm saying, are you kidding me? You're going to draft a guy that high in the 2nd round, in the 3rd round, from a Division II school? Just the football program just stopped, and it's kind of a reckoning of over a 12-year period of time of the dedication and the work ethic that every one of these guys puts in to achieve what they need to achieve. So the saddest thing is that you have got to think in terms of get to 30 before you do anything other than play ball. Get to 30 before you do anything before you play ball. And Tom Brady is the best example of that. He's the best example of that. He has brought nothing into his life until this deal was done. And if I could say anything to all these guys, don't do anything else. Don't think about anything else. Bank the paper, and don't even think about doing anything until you're at the stage where a guy has finished law school. That's what you need to do. You don't need to get married. You don't need to have kids. Because you think you go in there and the guys have kids and they're married. You think you got to fit in, and you don't need kids. You don't need a marriage. You don't need anything. Just like a guy going to be a doctor, just like a guy going to be a lawyer, until you're 30, you do none of that stuff. You dedicate yourself to your craft. There's going to be a lot of.
So, what do you think? What do you think Dallas should do? Immediately with their draft picks, based on what the squad they have.
Oh, they got to make a choice of having a tight end, man. They got to get a Billy Joe Dupree. They got to get a Jay Saudi. They got to get a guy that can run down the middle of the field. They got to get a guy on the offensive side of the ball, and on the defensive side of the ball, they need a pass rusher. They really do. I mean, and if they just need one, because the other guys are like great guys, man, in the middle of the field, and they're great guys. But you need a pass rusher. You need a guy that can do. They have a running back, okay, that's given. But Jason Witten, if he's playing, and I don't need to offend him, he's been a great player, probably in the history of the game. But he's running 4- and 5-yard routes. There's some guys there who can play that aren't given that chance to play. And they're great little athletes, and I've watched the tight ends, but you need that middle guy. You need the guy in the middle, and that will take the pressure off everybody else. So that's really my opinion.
I agree with the tight end, and when you think about it, he's no Jay Novacek, and no disrespect to Jason Witten, but it is what it is.
No,
but
dude, age catches up with everybody. It's nothing about what he's done. It's about he can't run. I don't care if you're not 30, you're 34. You can't run. You can't run at that speed. I don't care who you are. I couldn't do it. Mel Renfro,
right,
greatest cornerback, greatest free safety. He was all pro at all 4 positions. Could not run at 33. Okay, so that's what the point I'm trying to make, is that you need that. If you have that middle guy, Amari Cooper, he's a beast. He'd be a beast because you got people cramping it. He pushes it down. So I believe they need a tight end, number one. Number two, they got to fill an offensive lineman position, and then number 3, on the defensive side of the ball, you need another corner. You need a corner or safety. You need somebody that's filling the holes up in there. It could be a linebacker, but I think the 2 guys in the middle linebackers they play are good guys. And the guys on the outside. You just need a pass rusher. You fill one hole, you're good. And you got a new
great
coach.
Point.
Yeah, you got a coach, man. Okay, you got a coach.
Absolutely. Let's see what happens with this coach. Butch, as always, man, I appreciate you, bro. You be safe there in Texas, and we will be in touch. Thank you so much, sir.
No problem. Thank you, man, for having me. Bye.
Thanks, Butch. Butch Johnson, of course, a former Dallas Cowboy wide receiver, punt returner, underrated punt returner, kickoff returner. They're going to take a 30-second break, come back and talk with Levon Kirkland, one of my favorite Steelers. And full disclosure, I am a big-time Steelers fan, a big-time fan of his. Talk to him about in terms of the draft and some of those feelings in your stomach. Am I going to get drafted? Where am I going to get drafted? Talk about what this current Steeler team needs. I got my own feelings, and I'm going to leave mine to the side. Tony can answer that, and Levon. But we will talk about that in just a bit. We are in Pad Plus, Sebastian News radio show. Stay tuned.
Dermarest, the psoriasis solution, asks,
what's complete freedom? For me, it's an open road with the top down. It's my bare arms getting warmed by the sun. It's my bare arms without a trace of psoriasis.
Complete Freedom, brought to you by the complete relief of Dermarest psoriasis. Unlike brands which only relieve itching and inflammation, Dermarest psoriasis also removes the embarrassing scales, allowing healthy skin to grow.
Healthy skin? That's complete freedom.
Dermarest, the psoriasis solution.
Welcome back to the show. Thanks to all of our guests who have come on, talk some NFL draft, talking about the virus. It is affecting everybody and everything. Let's be clear about that. Shout outs to DJ, Daryl Jacobs, Nicole Melendez, Angela Green, Fred Whitted. We got to get him on the show, T. Get him on and see what's going on with him. Fred Whitted, shout out to you, bro. Appreciate you, man. Hope all is well with you. Mr. Winston-Salem State himself, Fred Whitted. I'm going to go back to the phones and bring in another guy who talk about playing well and being at a prestigious school. Of course, played at South Carolina and was drafted by the Pittsburgh Steelers. Former linebacker who played at a size you wouldn't think he would be a defensive lineman, and played athletically at the size he did, but linebacker and played so well. He Levon Kirkland and Levon, I appreciate you coming on always. You have LA Batchelor alongside Tony T. Mac McLean, sir.
Well, thank you guys for having me. I really appreciate it. Now, did you say I played at South Carolina, or you said I've come from South Carolina?
No, played.
Oh, I didn't play at South Carolina.
Clemson. I'm thinking of that. My bad.
That'll get you shot in Clemson now. Yeah.
He said,
yeah. But I know you and I like you,
Clemson.
so I'm gonna let you go with this one, but yeah.
All right. He is not a Gamecock at all. Let's just be clear. He's not a Gamecock. I meant to say Clemson, of course, from South Carolina, but played in Clemson. Thank you for that correction, Levon. You heard Butch Johnson talking about some of the things that he did, went through in the draft. Before we get to that, you know, when you look at this current Steelers team, Steelers, when you were there, before you, after you, it's always been built on defense and running game. Even the days of Bradshaw all the way to now with Big Ben. And some people feel like they kind of got away from that a little bit. But before talking about what they need, what do you see with the current team? If I'm not mistaken, they haven't made the playoffs in the last 3 years. Mike Tomlin been under scrutiny, even from myself. In terms of getting this team back to where they need to be. Some people think that maybe with the so-called greatest quarterback of all time going to the NFC, that maybe Pittsburgh and some other teams have a shot to do things to get back to the Super Bowl. But what do you see with this team and its current coaching staff?
Well, you know, I actually like Tomlin because, you know, it's really hard to get a dynamic winning coach. And he has been winning this year. If you think about the injuries that they had, the departures that they had, it would have been a tough job for anybody to really do a rebuilding job. So I'd say Tomlin is a fine coach. Now, if you look at what the Steelers need, I think defensively, they're fine. They're okay. They may need some more interior defensive alignment, but I think you have to address the quarterback situation because even if Big Ben comes back in fine fashion, realistically, he probably has maybe 2 good years left, maybe. And I'm being very optimistic on that. So I think even though the Pittsburgh Steelers are going to pick 49th, you may want to try to address your quarterback situation. I don't know if he was solid at that pick, but I think Tony Easton could be there with, a quarterback that, tall, can throw the ball, has an opportunity to maybe come into the league, be in a backup role for a while, and do some good things and be able to develop. So that's kind of how I see them right now. You got to look for, I think, you got to improve the running game. I like Connor, but he's been hurt. I think you have to address that a little bit too. So I think you either go quarterback or running back in this situation. But I'm not in the war room, so I don't really know for sure.
When you talk about the war room, talk about what it was like for you at Clemson, where, look, you were a hybrid, man. I mean, who was doing it at 265, 270, or whatever you were, even when you played at Pittsburgh, doing that? So talk about what went into it, what your family went through, what your thought process was, where you was going to go if you would be drafted, and all of those things. And did you think that Pittsburgh was on your radar?
Well, actually, Pittsburgh was on my radar the whole time. When I went to the combines, they were the team that gathered to interview me. I interviewed with everybody on that staff. And then throughout the process, I wanted to play with the Steelers. I had a meeting with Coach Cowher, and he just struck me as a young, energetic coach that was going to do some really good things at Pittsburgh. And I really wanted to play for the Steelers. Of course, you have no clue, but my gut was I wanted to be with the Steelers, and it happened to work out for me. As a prospect, I played more defensive end, outside linebacker at Clemson University, and I wasn't that big. I wasn't like the 260. I was still around maybe 240 going into the draft. Most people kind of projected me more inside, so at the Hula Bowl and the Senior Bowl, I ended up playing a little bit more inside backer because more people wanted to see if I could do it. I proved that I could be good. I didn't really have all the instincts of an inside linebacker, but Steelers probably thought if we bring him in here, we can develop him because he's a pretty good athlete, and that's exactly what happened. Going to my draft date, I remember going to my sister's house. The draft was on a Sunday, and I had a feeling that maybe I wasn't going to be a first rounder. I thought I was a first round talent, but I just thought that because I will be changing positions more likely that I was probably not going to first, but I thought definitely the second. And I remember the Pittsburgh Steelers, their pick was coming up. It was a 38th pick. I went into the bathroom and I looked in the mirror and I'm like, they're going to pick me. They're going to pick me. They're going to pick me. I walked back to the kitchen. I sat down by the phone. Sure enough, the phone rang. When I picked it up, Tom Donahoe answered the phone and said, "Hey, Levon, we're really considering picking you for our next pick." Thinking in my mind, ooh, I hope it's better than considering. I hope you guys are going to pick me. Then I got Charles Bailey, one of the pro scouts. He basically was like, "Do y'all have a television in Lamar, South Carolina?" Lamar's a very small town, so he was questioning whether we had television. "Well, do y'all have cable?" I'm like, "Yeah, we got cable." And he's like, "Well, if you turn to ESPN, your name is going to be coming on the ticket pretty soon. Welcome to the Black and Gold." Man, it was a dream come true. It was something that I thought about since I was 11 years old, that I made my mind up I was going to play football, and things just kind of worked out for me. I was very fortunate, very blessed by God that I was able to be drafted in the NFL. Nobody from my small town has ever been drafted to go to play pro sports. I was very thrilled. My family was extremely happy. And I just remember leaving my family home, going back to Clemson because we had exams. And just what a high I was on. It was an amazing feeling getting drafted by those guys. So it worked out for me too. I happened to get on the right team and the right organization, and it was really good.
We're talking with former linebacker for the Pittsburgh Steelers, Levon Kirkland, on the Batchelor News Radio show. Levon, when you look at those teams, I mean, with the Cardinal Lakes and the Lloyds and all those guys that you played with, talk about how it was to be a young guy coming in with that excitement and that enthusiasm and that athleticism that you had, and some of the people who were some of your mentors, because we had Butch Johnson on. He was talking about how Dak Prescott making some mistakes and things, and some of the young Cowboys, and that there's a gap, it seems, when it comes to mentors that will bring in, hey, Levon, this is how it is. This is the things you have to be worried about as a superior athlete, a pro athlete. And then, yourself trying to mentor some of those other younger guys as you got older.
Well, there's a difference in the NFL now. There's not a whole lot of veterans on your team, guys that you can follow and it be an example for you. Now, your mentors can come from anywhere. I mean, you have a mentor your age, but I think the difference was back then you had a nice mixture of veteran guys that really, if you even watch them, they can kind of give you some guidance. Like, for example, I didn't really per se talk to Demonte Dawson about be my mentor or what I need to do, and especially because he played center at the time. But I did watch his work ethic, and I kind of try to follow his pattern. On defense, we had so many great guys. We had guys like Greg Lloyd, Rod Woodson, Kevin Green, Carnell Lake, guys like that you kind of watch their actions more so than anything else. Because in my time, you couldn't really talk to the veterans. They had to talk to you. So trying to strike up a conversation with a guy who's been there for a while was a little tough. But, Jerry Oslowski was really good to me when I was a rookie. Merle Hodge was really good to me. He was my locker room mate when we were going to Latrobe at the time. So guys like that, you can draw a lot of mentors. And you don't have to necessarily talk to the guys, but, just by them being an example kind of shows you how to be a pro, how to approach the game. And like I said, I was fortunate in that way because we had some great guys and we had a great organization. Bill Carr was a young coach, and he was a linebacker guy, so I got some whispers in my ear from him. Marvin Lewis was young at the time, the coach for the Cincinnati Bengals. He was my linebacker coach. And Dick LeBeau, Don Capers, guys like that you get a lot of great advice from. So I was fortunate. I think nowadays it's a little tough because you don't really have a lot of veteran presence in the room that can kind of show you how to do it. Great examples, So it's a little different than it was back then, but I was lucky that we had the guys that we had.
Is it more because of free agency now that you don't have that veteran leadership in the locker rooms, Levon, or something else?
One more time, repeat the question. I'm sorry.
Is it more because of free agency with guys moving around more than when you got drafted and played, or is it something else that goes into it? Levon, are you there?
Yeah, I'm sorry. My phone kind of went out. Just one more time. Just ask me one more time.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
No problem. I said, do you think that you don't have that veteran leadership because of free agency is more prevalent now than back then, or is it something else?
Well, I think it's probably free agency, that owners have gotten smarter and say, like, well, we'll just take less talent. We'll take younger guys. We're not going to take guys who've been veterans that can play, and now you have to pay them more. Let's take guys who don't have to pay as much and, direct those guys. and let them be on the team. So a lot of times you're getting younger talent and you don't have to pay as much. But like I said, you don't have that veteran presence. So I think the salary cap, free agency has a lot to do with it.
Yeah, I would imagine. We're talking with Levon Kirkland, of course, former Pittsburgh Steeler, here on the Batchelor News Radio Show, 646-929-0130. If you're on Facebook Live, you can listen there as well and ask questions there as well for Levon. With that, I go to Tony T. McClain.
Oh, yeah, by the way, University of South Carolina Alumni Foundation on line 2, LA. Just to let you know.
I'm already in trouble, Tony. Don't exasperate it. Thank you very much.
No problem. Yeah, could have been worse, I guess. Mr. Kirkland, talk a little bit about now, if you had a chance to talk with some of the kids coming into the league right now, what would be some of the things you would say to them? How to prepare going into the league on and off the field.
Well, I think you would address them off the field more so than anything. I just talked to a gentleman that plays for the University of Miami, and Leon Cersei got me in touch with him, and we really talked a lot more so about off the field. And one of the things that I tried to address to him was, make sure that you're networking. And I wasn't really a big networking guy, so I'm saying it, as a guy who's older, that, people want to be involved, people want to get to know you. Make sure you take every kind of business card you possibly can and make sure that you keep in contact with those people, because after your football career is over with, you're going to need some network. You're going to need some friends that you know. Also, we always talk about making sure that you invest your money, you really invest your money wisely, that you take care of your money, especially what's going on now. You have to be prepared. You have to be ready for that. And then also about maybe, during the off season, I know guys are really, everybody's about working out and working hard. But I always say, the off season is a good time for you to look beyond your career and maybe do some internships, maybe do some stuff that will set you up going after you leave the game, because the game is a shelf life no matter how many years you play. Football-wise, I tell guys to always make it difficult for a team to get rid of you. And what I mean in that sense is that you gotta play, you gotta prepare like your head on fire. And I think some of the things, as being a coach, one of the things I would not recommend for players is, trying to know everything as far as the playbook is concerned. Mm-hmm. Because if you can go out there and make plays and minimize your mistakes. You don't want to be out there not knowing what you're doing. But I think more so than anything, you got to make plays so teams can be like, listen, man, this guy is dynamic. He can make plays. It's hard, he really splashes on film. I think a good coaching staff will understand that he's going to learn the plays. Yeah. It takes time to learn a whole NFL playbook, but if you're a guy that has the potential and you're making plays, I think that's a little bit more important than knowing everything in the playbook, because I've seen guys who know the playbook, who are smart, but can't make the plays. Mm-hmm. What's the difference? Right. You got a guy who out there, then you got a guy out there that, can't make plays or whatever like that. So the playbook is great, but if you're a really good player, I guarantee you will understand the playbook. You will get it. So you got to go out there. You got to make plays. You got to establish yourself as an NFL player. And so that's some of the advice that I would give. I mean, I don't know about anybody else.
And one last one, on that same sort of vein, for you, what was the biggest transition? Was it a lot of times guys say the speed of the game, a lot of times, like you said, talking about trying to learn the playbook. What was the toughest transition for you, and how did you feel like you were able to overcome it?
Well, for me, changing positions was different because I never played the position. So I switched from playing outside to inside. And so you go for a position that is just kind of like going after to a position that's more so like cerebral.
Mm-hmm.
So I think for me, honestly it was a combination of both. I mean, the speed was crazy. I mean, you see an offensive lineman that can absolutely run and can play. And at college, it wasn't always like that. You didn't always face an offensive line that was just really good. I think also the mental aspect of it now because, everybody knows what they're doing. Mm-hmm. Everybody knows the trick of the trade. You're new, so you don't really know all the little things that you can do to make your game better. So you have to go through this trial. And like I said, it took me personally a little bit longer because I was playing a different position than I ever played before. So some of the reads, some of the keys were just really different than I did at Clemson. So I kind of had a double whammy. But, I mean, after a year, they saw that I can make plays. And that was the thing. The thing that really helped me is one time we had a scrimmage, and it was a goal line stand. It was the last play of the game, and Barry Foster was running the ball, and I stuck him in the backfield.
Mm.
For them, that was like, okay, we can work with that.
Mm-hmm.
We can work with that. Okay, maybe he doesn't know everything. Maybe he doesn't really even know the position that well. But that guy can move and that guy can hit. He's a linebacker. He's going to get better. But I think the speed of the game and also the mental, I think they're kind of go hand in hand. I don't think it's one or the other unless you played in that system before and kind of know it. I think guys, most of the time they come in and the speed of the game and how guys play is probably even more so than the mental part of it is the thing that get most guys.
All right, thank you.
Yep.
Yeah, and I would think too, gap responsibilities and things of that nature too would be something. If you're going outside and coming off the edge as opposed to inside, and those nose tackles and tackles inside got to take on those linemen so you can get inside to hit that Barry Fosters or the quarterbacks that you have to deal with when you're playing inside linebacker, Levon. And, one of the things we talked about before, I have to ask you about again for the audience, is the fact that we still have great minds that play this game that are still not head coaches in this league that are African American. You being one of them, and I know you've had the experiences on coaching staffs, but you look at across the league, some of these guys who put their time in, that have really they've been running backs coaches and wide receivers coaches, the corner coaches, and everything else under the sun, coaches assistants, and yet they're still not in those coaching positions. We see these recycles, and you don't have to comment on that part, but a lot of these white guys that get these jobs, they've failed miserably. And it's about, I guess for them, it's about the Old Boy Network and some of those connections that they may have, Levon. But guys like you and that have played the game, that understand the game, that have been around the game, are still not getting the opportunities to coach at the highest level in the game.
Well, yeah, I mean, you can definitely see that. You can definitely see guys not getting that opportunity, whatever the reason is. And, I think it's human nature to actually hire people that are like you. Not so much different people, but people that are kind of like you, that have the same philosophy. So a lot of times that's the reason why you see that system keep going round and round, because people are hiring people that are like them. And if you look at the NFL, let's face it, there's not a lot of minority owners. There have been some teams that may hire African Americans or any other ethnic group, but a lot of times you're probably not going to get that. You're probably going to get somebody who knows somebody that likes that person and say, hey, we're going to give you an opportunity. And that's what it is, really. I mean, the NFL, I think it's all about who you know, and It's not always about what you know. There's some teams that take that risk, but a lot of times, if you look at the league, it really doesn't. You know, guys who've been in there forever, and they recycle those guys. But, you know, the owners have the right to hire who they want to. They do. And I think sometimes, as African Americans or anybody, we got to stop taking bad jobs. You know, I know that the Cleveland job is open, but man, that's a bad job. They have their foundation is really not that good. So we're taking jobs that are bad jobs too. So then when the season comes and then, you know, expectations are what they are, whether they're realistic or not, you know, you're part of a bad foundation to begin with. You have to really change that culture, and it's not always easy to change a culture, especially when things have been in place for quite some time. So that's a part of it too. You know, people hire who they like, and then you got to take a good job. You know, sometimes we're just taking the job that's available, and then you get in a situation and you're done, and you're fired, and it's like, wow, he really did a terrible job. It was already a terrible job.
Mm-hmm.
It was already. Tomlin was smart, man. He took the Pittsburgh Steelers job. That was a good job. That was a good job he had. This quarterback coming in, a great culture, great ownership. That's a good job. So the only thing you got to do is do your due diligence, lead, be the best salesman, the motivator you can possibly be, and you're good. But when you get a bad job, man, you gotta wipe out the whole culture almost. And that's including the owners, but they're not going anywhere. So you got to work with sometimes what you got to work with.
Right.
That's tough. When people talk about Marvin Lewis, man, Marvin Lewis did a great job at Cincinnati. A great job considering not having a full scouting department, not having an owner who wants to spend the money to get the guys. Cincinnati is not a destination for guys who are your top free agents. So a lot of times you're getting guys that like, hey, this is my last chance, or at least, you know, it's my last team. So that's one of the things too. You know, it's a combination of things. But a lot of times, man, we got to stop taking these bad jobs.
Yeah, that's a great point, and I know you're being very kind. That's definitely a great point. I mean, you even see it in college. I mean, at Florida State, the situation there, that brother, I mean, whoa, man, he walked in with it was a very empty cupboard in terms of the talent, especially on defense, which you decide you played it. So you see that at the pros and the college level. That's an excellent point. If you had the pinpoint final question with the Steelers, where they will go first, and a lot of people are surprised that they made the deal for Micah Fitzpatrick, but he turned out, at least for the season, to be worth a first-round pick playing at safety. But if you see where they're going with the first pick in their drafts in the second round, where do you think they'll go, and do you think maybe they'll trade down to get more picks, sort of like the Patriots like to do, so they can build on both sides of the ball?
Wow. I think, that was a risk they took with Fitzgerald, but he did work out. And, you basically got a 5-star for a first-round pick, because your first pick, you never know. You hope to get it right. The Steelers, for the most part, they normally get it right. So I think they knew what they were doing, and they had to do it. It's something that was urgency that they had to get done. As far as who they would get in the 49th pick, wow. I think quarterback is in need. I don't know if you search for 49ers to get that quarterback, but they have to address that quarterback need within, this year or next year. They do, because Ben is leaving. Ben is a all-timer. And you got to make sure you can, if you can, without reaching, replace that guy. I don't know if you find that guy in the 49th pick, but Tom Brady was a 6th-round pick. You never know. He may catch lightning, but most likely you probably won't. So I think you gotta address what you have to address. I mean, maybe this is a great, as everybody says, this is supposed to be the wide receiver draft. So I think you may find value in that 49th pick at wide receiver. There's going to be a lot of guys that are available. I mean, a bunch of guys. I don't think a lot of guys at wide receiver are going to go first round because there are going to be some guys who are picked by need. But, man, that second round, I mean, there's a lot of guys out there that you could probably get a very quality wide receiver. Just looking at it from a fan's perspective, I don't follow it every day. But, I mean, I think also you got to look at getting that ground game established too. Whether that be, other guys getting older on the offensive line. Is Connor really is he your guy? Is he really that guy who can make a difference? I think the thing about Connor is he healthy or not? He's a good running back, but it doesn't seem to stay healthy. And I think you may have to address the running back situation. But I think the defense seemed to be pretty solid. I don't think you have to really reach for, unless somebody was available, best player available. But I think that wide receiver position, I think you can get some great value. At 49, get a guy who is probably maybe a high second round or late first rounder. So I think there's some value there. So if you got an opportunity to get a guy who's on the board, who's a wide receiver, and especially somebody who can help Juju out as a number 2, I think that's valuable.
Yeah, you're right. Juju does need help. He's got to get healthy again and prove he's a number 1. And I agree with you with the Connor situation, staying healthy. And they got guys that are up for some big money on the offensive line coming up next year. And Cameron Hayward is getting older and nose tackle. So it's some different areas that they can go. We shall see. Mr. Kirkland, as always, appreciate you, man, and you and your family be well. And thanks for coming on as always.
Hey, you know what? Thank you guys for having me. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right.
Levon Kirkland, the former Pittsburgh Steeler linebacker, going to take a quick break, come back, and Tony and I wrap up everything this evening on the Batchelor News radio show.
Your mother-in-law just dropped in. It's dinner time, and she looks hungry. Time for a quick dinner. Think fast. Think eggs. Like an omelet with tomatoes and cheese. Quick, easy, delicious. So, she loves dinner, compliments your creativity, and finally admits you're not a shameless social climber who stole her baby boy away. All thanks to the incredible edible egg. For other quick dinner, lunch, and snack ideas, visit aeb.org.
Incredible edible egg.
The American Egg Board.
Welcome back to the show, and thanks to our guests this evening on the show. Don't forget, if you missed any part of the broadcast, you can go to our website, thebatchelornews.airtime.pro, Batchelor with a T. That's BATCHELR, thebatchelornews.airtime.pro. Follow us on Facebook at Pat Nation, on Twitter, Pat Nation 2, Instagram, and certainly if you're interested in having your own show, or advertising with us, you can hit us up at labachelor40@gmail.com. Thanks to all our Facebook Live folks, Ms. Patterson checking in as well, all over the country and the world. Go back to T-Mac. And T, both our previous guests talked about mentoring and mentorships. And even in our world, what we do, especially in our culture, we need that. We talk about how in this virus we have to be vigilant and we have to report the facts in the midst. And our facts are certainly important because the CDC is still not reporting how many black people are getting killed by this virus. And that's a separate thing that we can talk about another time. But mentorship talks about being professional, understanding once you get into whatever profession you are, the do's and the don'ts, the things to worry about. And when you get to a certain level, if you're Screaming A. Smith, if you're one of those brothers that are at that level and they're doing those things, that those pitfalls come. Money, women, whatever the case may be. But talk about that. I respect you so much in what you do in terms of your writing. I learn from you in your writing, right? And so, even if I'm not doing that, I could take from what you do and understand that in order to do that, what you do, and to be good at it and be professional at it, there's some things you did, a list of things to do or don't do to understand that. So talk about that in mentorship, especially when it comes to our people.
Well, just on a journalism level, and I tell this, I've told this to everybody: who, what, where, when, why, and how. You do those things, you'll never get sued. You never misquote anybody. You'll always have your facts straight and everything like that. A lot of what depending on what kind of writing you do, or let me just rephrase that. Any writing you do, you're going to have to do research. You're going to have to do your due diligence. And I myself, read. That's read. I always tell folks, read as if your life depended on it, whether it be books, whether it be the internet, newspapers, what have you. Read. That still is something that has to be done. It's beyond watching the games, having an opinion, and everything else. There's a lot of things to it, but if you're willing, it's like in anything else. It's sort of like what the ball players were saying. If you prepare, if you get the basics down, everything else will come into its own. Now, I've been lucky enough to been doing this basically since the second half of my last year in high school. I did a show that I know you're familiar with back in New Haven. That was basically my first job, and I was lucky enough to do that in high school. And that was December of 1979. So yeah, it's and when you realize how much the medium has changed in that period of time, hell, even just from when this show got started, things have changed. You have the internet, you have podcasts, you have other things. Newspapers are almost obsolete now, sadly. But at the end of the day, it's about reporting. And again, who, what, where, when, why, how. You do all of that, whether you're doing radio, whether you're doing newspapers, whether you're doing television, whether you're doing podcasts, whether you write books, whether you write for magazines or whatever. You do all that and you have a passion for what you do, it becomes second nature.
But see, some of the downfall is the pitfalls that we fall into in our society, in our culture. Not just like I said, we talked about the NFL, but even in the media or any walk of life. But the fact that we don't prepare those coming up behind us, we don't lift them up. This part of it is, oh man, they're gonna take